Settle in, get comfortable. This is one about a blade, a wolf who's afraid of it, and the only pair of hands he'll trust to hold it close. Chapter 1. The 11th Cut. The 11th cut took 43 seconds. Tess Birch counted the seconds because counting was what she did when someone in her chair was managing fear. Most customers managed small fears, the barber's version of a dentist's chair, the vague worry that she'd nick an ear or take too much off the top. She counted for them unconsciously, the way a person counts stairs in the dark. The man in the chair was not managing a small fear. Alpha King Barrett Haldane sat with his hands locked around the armrests of a straight-backed oak chair in a room that contained one mirror, one window, and nothing else. His knuckles had gone white 11 minutes ago and had not changed color since. His breathing was controlled in the specific, metered way of someone who had been taught to breathe through panic by someone who understood panic. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. His jaw was set. His shoulders were a straight line. Every part of him that could be disciplined was disciplined. His hands were shaking. Tess set the scissors down on the cloth she'd laid across the side table. The sound, metal on linen, made his breath catch. She waited. She did not rush. Rushing was not something she did, and it was certainly not something she would do in a room with a man whose father had been murdered by a blade held by a trusted hand. "Steady," Pip said. Not to Tess, to the room, to the situation, to the faint tremor in the king's fingers that Tess's wolf had been tracking since they'd walked in. "He's not a threat. He's terrified. We can work with terrified." Tess could work with terrified. She had been working with terrified for 6 years. She had inherited her grandmother's straight razor, her grandmother's patience, and her grandmother's single professional principle. A barber does not rush a customer who has chosen to be still. 11 cuts, she said. Her voice was level. She'd been narrating every movement for 2 hours. "I am lifting the scissors now. I am going to touch your hair on the left side. You will hear the scissors close." And the narration had become a kind of anchor between them. He did not relax when she spoke, but he stopped tightening. "Would you like to continue, or is 11 enough for today?" Barrett Haldane looked at himself in the mirror. His hair was still past his shoulders. 11 cuts had barely changed the silhouette. He had been handsome under the overgrowth and the exhaustion, she thought. And then she stopped thinking it, because thinking it was not her job. Thinking it a little bit, Pip observed. Tess ignored her wolf. "Same time next week," the Alpha King said. His voice was lower than she'd expected. Not loud, not commanding, not the voice of a man who ran 9 territories. Just low and rough at the edges, and very, very tired. Tess began packing her kit. Scissors into the leather roll, comb into the leather roll. The straight razor, untouched today, not even removed from its case. Back into the bottom of the bag. She had brought it because she brought it everywhere. She had not mentioned it because mentioning a blade in this room would have been like mentioning fire in a room full of dry wood. "Your beta," she said, "told me you'd attack me if I moved too quickly." Barrett's hands released the armrests. She heard his knuckles crack. "Garrett talks too much." "He was accurate about everything else." A pause. Barrett looked at her, actually looked for the first time. His eyes were gray-green, the color of old river stone, and there was something in them she filed away for later. The look of a man who had expected to endure this, and instead had been met where he was. "What else did he tell you?" "That you haven't allowed a blade near your face in 15 years. She said it the way she would say, "Your hair is thinning at the crown," or "You've got a cowlick here." Factual, diagnostic, a condition, not a judgment. That your hand has developed a tremor, that you need a barber but will not accept one, and that you need a wolf to do it. Barrett's jaw tightened. Barely, a fraction. But she was a barber. She read jaws the way other people read faces. A human barber wouldn't hear the growl before it came, she said. Garrett wanted someone who could read you. I'm Wolf. I can read you. She let the words sit. He did not react to it. She had not expected him to. He was a king. He'd scented her as a wolf the moment she'd walked in, and the fact that he'd allowed the appointment to continue meant he'd already made the calculation. But she wanted it said, between them, a blade and a wolf, on both sides of the chair. I don't flinch, Tess said. That's what he was buying. She left the small room. She walked down 3 flights of stairs and past 2 guards who watched her with the specific unease of men who did not understand why a village barber had been permitted alone in a room with their king. She walked through the courtyard, across the bridge, and into the village road that led home. The autumn air was sharp. The light was copper. His wolf leaned, Pip said, halfway down the hill. Tess stopped walking. When you touched his hair, the 3rd cut, his head tilted toward your hand, a millimeter, maybe less. His wolf leaned. I know, Tess said. You didn't mention it. It wasn't mine to mention. Pip was quiet for a moment. Then, steady hands, steady girl. We'll be back next week. I can be patient. The thing about being a barber, and this was the thing Tess had never said aloud to anyone, not even Nan, was that people trusted her with something intimate and then forgot her the moment they left the chair. She was steady hands. She was a clean shave. She was the brief, anonymous comfort of someone who held a blade near your throat and proved, through the act of not cutting, that the world was safe enough to sit still in. And then they paid her and they left, and they did not think about her until the next time they needed to be still. She had made peace with this. It was the job. It was not the barber's business to be remembered. It was the barber's business to be useful. We have never made peace with this, Pip said. Not once. Not for a single day. Go to sleep, Pip. I am a wolf. We do not sleep when there is something interesting happening. And the most interesting thing in 6 years just happened in that room. He leaned 1 millimeter. He leaned 1 millimeter toward our hand. And he is a man who has not leaned toward anything in 15 years. That is not 1 millimeter. That is a revolution. Tess walked home. Chapter 2. The Razor. By week 3, Barrett Haldane could sit in the barber's chair with his hands in his lap. This was not a small thing. Tess understood what it had cost, the discipline of it, the deliberate unclenching, the decision to rest his hands on his thighs instead of locking them around wood. She did not comment. She did not praise. She trimmed his hair in the careful, narrated way she had trimmed it from the beginning, lifting the scissors, left side, 2 inches. You'll hear the close. And if the narration had become less frequent, if she sometimes made 3 cuts without announcing each one, that was progress they both pretended was unremarkable. His wolf leaned every time. Not the millimeter of the first appointment, not the cautious, unconscious tilt of the second. By week 3, when Tess ran her fingers through his hair to check the length, a standard barber's gesture, the kind she performed 20 times a day on customers who were not kings, Barrett's head followed her hand with the specific weight of a wolf seeking contact. Not fast, not obvious. A slow tilt, like gravity pulling him toward her palm. He caught himself. He straightened. He pretended it had not happened. He's pretending, Pip noted. I know. He's very bad at it. I know. Are we also pretending? We are being professional. Professionally in denial, noted. Tess was being professional. She was a barber. She cut hair. She trimmed beards. She shaved the men of 3 villages with a straight razor she had inherited from a woman who had used it every morning for 4 decades. She had a calm temperament and a wolf named Pip, who had exactly 0 respect for professional boundaries when it came to the Alpha King's jawline. The appointments continued weekly. They had begun to talk. Not about important things. Tess was not the kind of woman who prompted confessions, and Barrett was not the kind of man who offered them. They talked about her village, about the weather, about the specific impossibility of cutting hair that had been untended for 15 years, how the grain changed direction 3 times on the left side of his head, how there was a stubborn patch at his crown that grew at a different rate than everything else, how his hair had more copper in it than she'd expected, visible only in the late afternoon light. "You have complicated hair," she told him once on week 4, adjusting the angle of a cut. "I have complicated everything." "Your hair more than most." He almost smiled. She saw the muscles attempt it and fail. The almost smile was worse than no smile. It was the evidence that the machinery existed but had ceased from disuse. They talked about her grandmother in small pieces, how Nan Burt had sharpened the razor every morning, how she'd cut hair through the fever winter of '63, when the village lost 9 people and Nan had shaved 3 of them the morning before they died, because a man deserved a clean face for whatever came next. How Nan had said a barber holds a blade near someone who has chosen to be still, and that is not grooming, that is faith. Barrett listened to the grandmother stories with a particular attention, the way a man listens to a description of a thing he no longer believes exists. Once, after the story about the fever winter, he was quiet for a long time and then said, "She sounds like someone who would have been good at this." "At what?" "At knowing when to be still." Tess didn't answer. She was adjusting the drape across his shoulders, and the movement brought her close enough that his scent filled the space between them. Charred oak and cold iron. She had been cataloging it for weeks now, the way she cataloged everything about her customers: the grain of their hair, the angle of their jaw, the particular architecture of their skull. Professional observation. Diagnostic habit. Except she did not catalog other customers' scents. She did not notice the warmth underneath other customers' charred oak. Professional observation, Pip repeated. Diagnostic habit. I am making a note of these phrases for future reference. When you are ready to admit what they actually mean, I will be here. But Pip was not entirely focused on Tess's denial. Something else had been happening during the appointments. Something Pip had not told Tess, because Tess would have filed it under professional observation and moved on, and Pip did not want it filed. Pip could feel the other wolf. Not through Barrett, through the scent, through the quality of the stillness. Barrett's wolf was not performing calm the way Barrett was. Barrett's wolf was genuinely calm, had been genuinely calm since the first appointment. The human was managing panic through discipline. The wolf underneath had already decided that Tess's hands were safe. Pip could feel the shape of that certainty, patient, warm, unhurried, the specific weight of a creature that had been waiting for something for a very long time and had recognized it the moment it walked through the door. 15 years of patience. Pip had never felt anything like it. Most wolves she encountered were reactive, instinctual, surface quick. This one was deep water still. This one had waited. He's been waiting, Pip thought, not to Tess, to herself. His wolf has been waiting for years, not for a barber, for someone he could lean toward. And he chose us before the human even sat down. Tess did not know about this. Pip did not tell her. Inside Barrett's mind, in the part that watched and waited, Brack had been cataloging too. Barrett's wolf had not been dormant. Barrett's wolf had never been dormant. Brack had been there through every year, every flinch, every time Barrett had cut his own hair with shaking hands in front of a locked mirror. Brack had been patient. Brack had been a quiet constant at the back of Barrett's mind. Warm, unhurried, waiting for the exact thing that had walked through the door 8 weeks ago, carrying a leather bag and a voice that narrated every movement before she made it. Her hands, Brack said. He had been saying it since week 1, the same observation, delivered with the same quiet certainty. Her hands. She is not going to hurt us. Barrett had always known that. You know it in the part that thinks. I know it in the part that is. Brack knew something else, too. He'd known it since the first appointment, filed it away with the same patience he filed everything. She was Wolf. Under the clean linen and warm steel of her, under the professional calm, she was a wolf. Her animal present in the way she read a room before she sat down, in the way her stillness matched his, in the way her pulse never spiked when he flinched. A human Barber might have managed composure. Only a wolf would have managed everything. Her wolf is quiet, Brack observed. She doesn't push it forward, she doesn't perform it, but it's there, in her hands, in the way she waits. Brack did not think about the other wolf beyond this. He was not interested in the other wolf. He was interested in the hands. This was unusual. Wolves generally locked onto the other wolf first, the animal recognizing the animal before the humans caught up. But Brack had spent 15 years focused on one thing, keeping Barrett safe. And what kept Barrett safe was the hands. They were sure. They did not flinch. They were what mattered. He had not noticed that the hands had a wolf behind them. He had not looked. On week 4, Garrett pulled Tess aside after the appointment. Garrett was Barrett's beta, a compact, dry-faced man in his 40s who had been running Barrett's daily operations for a decade with the air of someone managing a slow-motion emergency wearing a crown. He was not warm. He was not cold. He was precise. And he was watching Tess with an expression she had seen before, on the faces of people who needed her to not stop doing something they couldn't name. "He is different after your appointments," Garrett said. "Different how?" "He sleeps. He makes better decisions. He lets Sefton brief him without gripping the desk." Garrett paused. "I don't know what you are doing in that room. I am cutting his hair. You are doing more than that." "I am cutting his hair," Tess said, slowly, with commentary. Garrett studied her. "Don't stop." On week 6, Barrett asked for the beard. Tess had known it was coming. His beard had grown uneven, trimmed badly by his own hand, at angles that suggested he'd done it fast, in poor light, wanting it over with. The beard required a straight razor. The straight razor required proximity to his throat. She had not rushed toward this moment. She had not even mentioned the razor in the bag. "The beard," Barrett said, settling into the chair. "I want it done properly. That requires the straight razor. I am aware of what it requires." Tess watched him. His hands were in his lap, but his fingers had laced together. A new tell, one she'd catalogued over 6 weeks. Not gripping, bracing. He was preparing himself for something he knew would be hard. She opened the leather case. She set the razor on the side table where he could see it. She did not touch it. She let him look. "This razor has been in my family for 40 years, she said. "My grandmother used it on every customer she ever served. She nicked 0. I have nicked 0. The blade will not touch your skin unless you tell me you are ready." Barrett looked at the razor. He looked at her. He held out his hand. She gave it to him. He turned it over. He tested the weight. He ran his thumb, carefully, not along the edge, across the flat of the blade. His hand was steady. "See," Brack said, "steady. We are all steady here." Barrett handed the razor back. "I'm ready." Tess lathered his jaw. She worked in silence. The narration protocol had become unnecessary. He didn't need it anymore. He trusted her. She knew the exact moment it had happened, the week 3 appointment when she'd made 3 consecutive cuts without announcing them, and he hadn't flinched. Something in him had decided. Something in her had understood what it meant to be the person someone like Barrett Haldane had decided about. She drew the razor along his jawline, left side first, with the grain, the way Nan had taught her. The sound of the blade on stubble was the only sound in the room. that small, private scraping, the sound that meant someone had chosen to be still for you. Barrett's breathing was slow. His eyes were closed. His wolf was leaning, not slightly, not cautiously, fully. His head tilted toward the razor with the specific surrender of a creature that had decided it was safe. Pressing toward the blade, not away from it, Tess's hand did not waver. She finished the left side. She wiped the blade, relathered, repositioned. Her left hand cupped his jaw to angle his head, a barber's hold, firm and gentle, the kind of touch that says, "I have you. You can be still now." Barrett's jaw was warm under her palm. She could feel his pulse, slower than it had been 6 weeks ago, slower than it had any right to be, given what she was about to do. She drew the razor along his right jaw, under his chin, along the line of his throat, the most vulnerable place on any body, the place where his father had died. She felt him go still, not rigid, not panicked, still in the way a wolf goes still when it is being exactly where it trusts. Her fingertips were against the underside of his jaw. His pulse beat against her ring finger. She could feel it, the slow, trusting rhythm of a heart that had learned, in 6 weeks, that this particular blade was different. "We are touching the Alpha King's throat," Pip said, with a reverence Tess had never heard from her wolf before. "And he is breathing. He is breathing slowly. Do you understand what this is?" Tess understood. She finished. She wiped the razor. She folded it closed with the practiced motion her grandmother had performed 10,000 times. "Done," she said. Barrett opened his eyes. He looked in the mirror. Clean-shaven, hair trimmed, younger than he'd appeared in weeks. The exhaustion still present, but carried differently now, like a weight that had been redistributed. Something crossed his face. He wiped it, one thumb quick under his left eye. One tear. Just one. He pretended it was nothing. "It was not nothing," Brack said quietly. "It has been 15 years, and she held a blade to our throat, and we were safe. That was not nothing." "Same time next week," Barrett said. Tess packed her kit. She was nearly at the door when she turned back. There was a spot of lather she'd missed, a small streak behind his left ear, where the jawline curved. She crossed back to him. She dampened her cloth and wiped it. Her thumb brushed the skin behind his ear. The contact lasted approximately 2 seconds. Barrett's breath stopped. Not caught, not hitched. Stopped. His whole body went still. The predator still that wasn't quite human, too still, too long, the kind of stillness that told another wolf everything about what was happening beneath the surface. Tess's hand did not move. She finished wiping. She stepped back. "Missed a spot," she said. Barrett looked at her. His eyes had shifted. Just at the edges, the gray-green brightening to something warmer, something amber, for half a second before he pulled it back. "Thank you," he said. It came out lower than he'd intended, half an octave below his normal register. Tess left the room. On the stairs, Pip said, "Charred oak and cold iron." "What?" "His scent. You finally noticed. You've been breathing it for 6 weeks, and you finally let yourself register it. Charred oak and cold iron. And something underneath, warm, that he keeps locked. I'm a barber." "You're a barber who just touched the Alpha King behind the ear, and he stopped breathing. We should discuss what that means." "We should discuss nothing." Professionally in denial. Still noted. Chapter 3. The Leaning. 4 months of appointments, 16 weeks, 16 hours in a small room with 1 mirror, 1 window, and a man whose wolf reached for her hands the way water reaches for the lowest ground. Barrett had stopped pretending. Not publicly. Publicly, the appointments were exactly what they appeared. But in the small room, Barrett leaned into her hand knowingly, without correcting, without straightening. He leaned and he looked at her in the mirror, and his expression said, "I know what I am doing, and I am doing it anyway." "Finally," Brack said, 15 years I've been waiting for you to stop pretending, and this is how it happens. A woman with scissors. I accept this." Her hands. Her hands. Barrett ignored the volume. Brack had been getting louder, not in the panicked way, but in the tender way, the way a wolf gets when it has been right about something for months and the human is finally catching up. Tess noticed the shift. Barrett's shoulders were different now. His jaw unclenched before she started, not after. He arrived for appointments early. He talked more. About Garrett's organizational tyranny. About the castle cook who had served the same breakfast for 11 years and had once threatened to resign when Barrett suggested porridge. About the view from the North Tower, which he'd rediscovered last week because he'd started walking the grounds again for the first time in years. He did not tell her about his father. She did not ask. One afternoon, late in month 4, she was trimming around his left ear, the ear with the faint scar at the temple, which she'd noticed on the first day and never asked about, when he said, "Tess." Her name. He had never used it. In 16 weeks of appointments, he had called her Barber or Mistress Birch, or nothing at all. He had not once used the name she had given him on the first day. "Tess." He said it again, as if testing the weight of it, as if a name was a blade he was learning to hold. "My wolf leans into your hands." She did not stop cutting. "Yes, he does." "You've never mentioned it." "It was not mine to mention." A silence, not uncomfortable. The silence of a man choosing his words with the precision of someone who usually chose them politically and was now choosing them personally. And the two modes require different muscles. "I have been pretending not to notice for 4 months." "I know." "I cannot pretend any more." Tess set the scissors on the cloth. She looked at him in the mirror. His gray-green eyes were clear. His hands were in his lap, open-palmed, not braced. His wolf was so close to the surface she could see it. The amber warmth at the edges of his irises, the stillness in his body that was not human stillness. "Say yes," Pip said. "Whatever he's about to ask, say yes." "We have been professional for 4 months, and it has been the longest 4 months of my life." "Tess," Barrett said, "you are the only person in 15 years I've trusted with a blade. You are also the only person whose hands my wolf reaches for." He paused. The managed mode was dropping. She could hear it, the way his voice changed registers, the half-octave drop that meant the careful public version of Barrett Haldane was stepping aside. "I have been coming for haircuts. My wolf has been coming for you. I would like to stop pretending they are different visits." Another pause, shorter this time. "May I court you?" "Yes," Pip said. "Sit back down," Tess said. "Your sideburns are uneven." Barrett blinked. Then, and she saw it happen, the first time she'd seen it, the corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile, the ghost of a smile, the implication of a smile, in a face that had forgotten the mechanics. He sat back down. "Then yes," Tess said. She fixed the sideburns. He leaned into her hands one more time, this time knowingly, this time without pretending, this time as a man who had decided to stop performing composure in the one room where it had never been required. "Her hands," Brack said, with the quiet devastation of a wolf who had been right for 4 months and was only now being acknowledged. "I told you. I have been telling you since week 1. Her hands. Steady. Safe. Ours." "Not ours yet," Barrett thought. "Details," Brack said. "I am patient. I have been patient for 15 years. I can be patient for the courtship part, but I want it on the record that I was right." The courtship made Tess stupid. She had not been stupid in 6 years. She had been competent, reliable, and professionally calm. She had been exactly the person her customers needed her to be. The barber who held the blade, who did not flinch, who cut and cleaned and packed and left. Barrett Haldane made her stupid. On the first Thursday after the courtship began, she dropped the scissors. She had never dropped scissors in 6 years of practice. She dropped them because Barrett had arrived for his appointment wearing a different shirt, a deep blue linen instead of his usual charcoal. And when he sat in the chair, she had noticed the way the color changed his eyes, and she had been thinking about his eyes instead of thinking about her hands, and the scissors had hit the stone floor with a sound that rang through the small room like a bell. Barrett looked at her in the mirror. "Are you all right?" "I dropped the scissors," she said, because that was the only true thing she could think to say. "You've never dropped the scissors." "I am aware of that." He looked at her for a moment longer. Something moved in his expression. Not the ghost smile. Something newer. Something that was learning to be delighted. "What's different today?" "Nothing is different. You're wearing a different shirt. That's not related." "It is extremely related," Pip said. "His arms, in that shirt, we are in crisis." She picked up the scissors. She cut his hair. She dropped them again 7 minutes later when he said, "You smell like warm steel," in the low register, and she realized he had been cataloging her scent the same way she had been cataloging his. On the second Thursday, Barrett extended the appointment. Not formally, he simply stopped saying, "Same time next week," at the end. Instead, he said, "Stay for tea." Tea arrived via Garrett, who brought it without being asked, and with an expression that suggested he had been bringing tea for this purpose for at least a week. They sat and drank tea and talked about nothing, and Tess noticed that Barrett had moved his chair closer to hers by approximately 4 inches, and that this 4 inches felt like the most significant distance in 9 territories. On the third Thursday, she found the comb. He'd left it on the side table before she arrived, with no note. Not a decorative comb, a barber's comb, handmade, the teeth carved from ironwood. She picked it up. The handle was exactly the width of her palm. He had measured her hand. Or more likely, had someone measure one of her other tools while she wasn't looking, and worked from that. "He measured our hand," Pip said. "He had someone measure our hand. This is the most romantic thing that has ever happened to anyone, and I am including every romance in history. It's a comb. It is an ironwood comb, handmade for our grip, and we are going to keep it forever. And we are going to think about him every time we use it. And we are going to use it every day. And we are already lost. We are so lost. We have been lost since the first appointment, and we have been pretending we haven't, and I am done pretending. Are you done pretending? I am cutting the Alpha King's hair. You are in love with the Alpha King, and you dropped the scissors twice last week because he was wearing a blue shirt. We are done pretending. Tess put the comb in her kit. She used it on Barrett's hair. He watched her use it in the mirror, and his wolf leaned toward the sight of her holding something he'd given her. And Tess's wolf leaned back, which was a thing wolves did when they had stopped fighting the obvious, and neither of them mentioned it. She was losing her steadiness, and she could not bring herself to care. She went home after appointments and replayed conversations. She sharpened the razor in the mornings and thought about his jaw. She lay in bed and catalogued the specific weight of his head when he leaned into her hand, not as a diagnostic, not as a barber, but as a woman who had memorized the exact pressure of someone else's trust. We are in so much trouble, Pip said on a Tuesday, while Tess was sharpening the razor for the 3rd time that morning. I know. Good trouble, though, the best kind of trouble. Pip had her own trouble that she was not sharing. During the appointments, when Tess was cutting and Barrett was leaning, Pip had been doing something wolves were not supposed to do. She had been watching the other wolf. Not through Tess's eyes, through the feeling of him, the quality of his attention, the way Brack's patience changed texture during the appointments, shifting from vigilant to settled to something Pip didn't have a word for. The way a wolf feels when the thing it has been guarding is finally, genuinely safe. Brack was beautiful in his patience. This was a private observation Pip had no intention of sharing with her human, because Tess would have said, "We are professionals," and Pip would have had to explain that professionalism had nothing to do with it. Pip was not interested in Barrett's jaw, or Barrett's eyes, or Barrett's blue shirt. Pip was interested in the wolf who had waited 15 years without complaining, without performing, without asking to be noticed. Who had simply been there, warm and patient and certain, while his human broke around him. He doesn't know I exist, Pip thought. He looks at our hands and he sees the safety. He doesn't see me behind the safety. That's fine. I can wait too. Tess did not know. Pip kept this one for herself. Barrett was losing his composure too. She could see it, the managed mode flickering, the careful political version struggling to hold. He arrived earlier each week. He talked more. He told her about Garrett's organizational tyranny, about the castle cook who had served the same breakfast for 11 years and had once threatened to resign when Barrett suggested porridge. He told her about the North Tower view, which he'd rediscovered because he'd started walking the grounds again for the first time in years, at 3 p.m, when the light was the same quality as the light in the small room. He did not say, because the light reminds me of your appointments. He did not need to. On the 4th Thursday of the courtship, Sefton appeared. Sefton was the commander of the King's Guard, a lean, wire-taut man in his late 40s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as the castle walls. He stood in the doorway at the end of Tess's Thursday appointment, and he did not enter, and he did not leave. "Commander," Barrett said. "Sire." Sefton's eyes were on Tess, on her bag, on the straight razor case visible at the top. "I know who she is," Sefton said. "The barber, the one you allow near your throat with a blade." The word allow landed like a stone in still water. Sefton looked at Tess. "I was 22, he said, when the old king died. I was at the doorway. I was 3 steps from the chair. The barber had been cutting King Aldis's hair for 20 years. He had a straight razor against the king's throat. He drew it across. I was 3 steps away, and I was too slow." The room was very quiet. "I have dedicated my life to making sure no blade comes near this king," Sefton said. "You have undone that in 4 months." "Commander," Barrett said, a warning in his voice. "I am not making a threat," Sefton said. He looked tired, not angry, tired in the way Barrett had been tired on the first appointment. The specific exhaustion of a man who has been carrying something since he was a boy and has never set it down. "I am telling you that every Thursday for 4 months I have stood outside that door and waited for the sound of something going wrong." Tess looked at Sefton. She looked at Barrett. She looked at the straight razor case in her bag. "Commander," she said, "my grandmother cut hair for 40 years. She nicked 0 customers. I have cut hair for 6 years. I have nicked 0 customers. You are not wrong to be afraid, but I am not the barber who killed his father. I am the barber who is teaching him that not every blade ends the same way." Sefton studied her for a long moment. Then he turned and left. Barrett exhaled. His hands, she noticed, had moved back to the armrests. He was gripping them for the first time in weeks. "Same time next week," she said. Not a question. Barrett looked at her. "Same time next week." She left. Barrett sat in the chair for a long time after the door closed, his hands on the armrests, gripping. The regression was specific, not to the first appointment, but to a place underneath the first appointment, the place where Sefton's argument lived. "She is not the pattern," Brack said. "How do you know?" "Because I am the part that would know. I am the part that tracks what is safe and what is not. And she has never once registered as a threat, not for a single second. I am asking you to trust the part of yourself that knows." Barrett did not trust the part of himself that knew. That was the whole problem. Chapter 4. The Blade. The confrontation happened 2 days after Sefton's visit. Barrett was in the council chamber, finishing a briefing on the eastern border. Sefton waited until the room cleared. He did not sit. He stood at the far end of the table, his hands behind his back, and he spoke the way he always spoke. Measured, precise, the way a man speaks when he has rehearsed something for days and is now delivering it. "Your father's barber was a man named Eamon Tull," Sefton said. "He cut your father's hair for 20 years. He was trusted. He was permitted alone with the king. He had access to the king's throat with a razor." Barrett did not move. Eamon Tull was not evil. He was bought. Someone paid him. He had debts. He had a family. He was given a choice between his family and his king, and he chose his family. And your father died in a barber's chair. I am aware of how my father died, Sefton. You are now permitting a woman, a wolf, a village barber, a person you are also bonding to, alone with your throat. Weekly. For 4 months. Sefton's voice cracked. Not much. The width of a hair. She has access, Barrett. She has earned access. That is exactly how it happened with Tull. 20 years of earned access. And one day, the access was used. Barrett said nothing. You think she would hurt me? I think I was 22 years old, and I was standing 3 steps from your father's chair when Eamon Tull drew the razor across his throat. I think I have spent every year since ensuring that never happens again. I think you are asking me to watch it and trust that this time the blade will be gentle. She is gentle, Brack said. She has been gentle every... What would you have me do, Sefton? End the appointments. End the courtship. Choose someone whose hands do not hold a blade. Barrett looked at his commander. He saw the 22-year-old at the doorway. He saw the 15 years. He saw a man who had failed once, catastrophically, and had built his entire life around ensuring it never happened again. I will consider what you've said, Barrett said. Sefton left. You are not going to consider what he said, Brack said. You are going to believe what he said, because it is easier to believe the worst interpretation of your own choices than to trust anything. I know you. I have been you for 29 years. You are going to do the wrong thing, and I am going to be very angry about it. Barrett canceled the appointments. Garrett arrived at Tessa's shop on a Tuesday morning with an expression that suggested he was delivering news he personally disagreed with, but was professionally obligated to convey. The king has canceled Thursday's appointment, Garrett said, and all subsequent appointments. Tess was sharpening the razor. She did not stop sharpening. Did he say why? He said he has reconsidered the arrangement. Has he reconsidered the arrangement, or has he reconsidered me? Garrett sat down. He sat the way a man sits when he has been carrying someone else's weight and is, for one moment, setting it on a different surface. Barrett believes that he is a man with a wound that will never close, Garrett said carefully, and that bonding himself to the person who holds the blade is the most reckless thing he could do. He does not want to trap you in a bond with a man who may always flinch. No, Pip said, very firmly. No, we are not accepting this. We have been steady for 4 months. We have earned this, and he does not get to take it away because a guard with his own wound told him fear is the same thing as wisdom. What does Barrett want? Tess said. Barrett wants you to be safe from him. That's not what I asked. I asked what he wants. Garrett looked at her. He wants you. His wolf has not leaned toward anyone in his life. Not his mother, not his beta, not a single person in 9 territories, until you. I disagree with his decision, and I cannot tell him that, but I can tell you, and you are a woman who does not flinch. His hair is going to get long again, she said. Yes. I am going to need 2 weeks. If I go now, he'll interpret it as pressure. I need him to feel the absence first. Garrett stood up. He straightened his coat. He looked, finally, like a man who had accomplished something. 2 weeks, he said. I will ensure the small room remains available. he left. 2 weeks, Pip said. 2 weeks of him pretending he doesn't need us and us pretending we don't know he's pretending. This is going to be the longest 2 weeks of my professional life. We don't have a professional life. We are a wolf. We are a wolf with steady hands, by association. And our human is about to do something very brave and very stupid. And I want it on the record that I support it completely. 2 weeks passed. They were long weeks. Tess cut hair. She shaved beards. She sharpened her grandmother's razor every morning the way Nan had sharpened it. Slow, methodical, 3 strokes on each side of the leather strop, testing the edge with her thumb. She served customers who were not kings. She did not flinch. She did not falter. On the 3rd day, a farmer named Hollis sat in her chair and tilted his head for the razor, and Tess's throat closed. Not because of Hollis. Hollis was a perfectly ordinary man with a perfectly ordinary beard. Because the tilt was wrong. Too easy. Too automatic. Too unearned. Barrett had spent 6 weeks learning to tilt his head for her. 6 weeks of counting and narrating and proving, and Hollis just tilted, like it was nothing. Like trust was the default state and not something that had to be rebuilt from rubble. She shaved Hollis without incident. He paid. He left. He did not think about her. Nobody thought about the barber. "That's the wound, isn't it?" Pip said quietly. "That's the thing we don't say." The wound was this. Tess Birch was useful. She had steady hands and a family razor and a professional calm that made people trust her with the most vulnerable part of themselves. She was the vessel of the trust, not the object of it. When Barrett canceled the appointments, he was not canceling Tess. He was canceling the service she provided. The hands, the narration, the steadiness. He could find another pair of hands. The fact that he couldn't, the fact that there was no other barber in 9 territories whose hands his wolf would lean toward, did not change the underlying architecture of the wound. Tess was the steady hands. That was what she was for. Nan had been the same. 40 years of cutting hair. 40 years of being the reliable one, the calm one, the woman you trusted with a blade. Nan had died in her shop with the razor on the counter and 3 appointments in the book for the following day. She had been mourned by 200 customers. She had been remembered as the best barber in the valley. She had been remembered for her hands. Tess did not want to be remembered for her hands. On the 9th night, she shifted. She hadn't planned it. She had been lying in bed, unable to sleep, her skin too tight and her pulse too fast, and her mind running the same circuit it had been running for 9 days. The small room, the mirror, the window, the copper in his hair at 3 p.m. And something in her decided that the human shape was not going to work tonight. She shifted in the yard behind her shop. The cold hit her differently in wolf form, sharper, more present, more informational. The world opened up the way it always did when she let Pip have the body. Scent first, sound second, sight reduced to movement and contrast. She ran. Not far, not dramatically. She ran the ridge above the village, where the pine trees thinned and the ground was cold and the wind carried everything. Pip ran her easily, the way Pip did everything, steadily, without performance, without apology. Pip did not think in words when she had the body, but she knew things. She knew the charred oak and cold iron was missing from their days. She knew the leaning was missing. She knew something had been building for 16 weeks and had been taken before it finished. And the incompleteness was a physical sensation, a tooth half pulled, a cut half made. She ran until the restlessness eased. She shifted back in the yard, the cold air on her bare skin, the disorientation of returning to human form. The brief settling, the world narrowing back to human register, the hands remembering they were hands. She went back to bed. She slept. She dreamed about the small room. In the dream, the chair was empty and the mirror reflected no one. On the 15th day, Tess packed her bag. Scissors, the ironwood comb he'd made for her hand, cloth, leather roll. She did not pack the straight razor. She walked to the castle. She crossed the bridge. She approached the gate. Sefton was standing in the courtyard, not at his post, in the courtyard itself, as if he had been waiting. His arms were at his sides. His angular face was unreadable. He looked at Tess. He looked at her bag. He looked at the absence of the razor case. "You didn't bring the blade," he said. "No." A long silence. Sefton studied her the way he had studied her in the doorway of the small room, not with hostility, but with the specific attention of a man evaluating a threat. Except this time, she realized, he was not evaluating whether she was a threat. He was evaluating whether she was worth the risk. "He hasn't slept in 12 days, Sefton said. "I know." "He cut his own hair. Badly." "I assumed." Sefton stepped aside. Tess walked past him. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs. She walked the corridor to the small room. The room was empty. 1 chair, 1 mirror, 1 window. Afternoon light through the glass, dust motes. Tess sat down in the barber's chair, not behind it, not beside it, in it. She sat where Barrett had sat every Thursday for 4 months. She folded her fingers in her lap. She did not grip the armrests. She waited. Barrett found her 30 minutes later. He appeared in the doorway, rigid, controlled, managing something internal with discipline and metered breathing. His hair was longer, not as long as it had been when she'd first arrived, but longer than she'd left it. He'd trimmed it himself. She could see where, badly. "You're in my chair," he said. "Yes." "You were not summoned." "No." "The appointments were cancelled." "I noticed. Your hair noticed, too." His jaw tightened. The managed mode held, but barely. Behind his eyes, she could see the amber starting. "You need to leave," he said. "No." "Tess, I cancelled the appointments for a reason." "You cancelled the appointments because Sefton told you I'm a pattern, and you believed him, because believing the worst thing about your own life is easier for you than trusting anything." She was not calm. She had walked in calm. She had sat in the chair calm. She had waited for 30 minutes calm. But now he was standing in the doorway, telling her to leave, and the steadiness was cracking, and underneath it was something she had not allowed herself to feel for 2 weeks. Fury. Real, bone-deep, shaking fury. "You cancelled me, Barrett." Without asking, without explaining. "You sent your beta to my shop on a Tuesday morning to tell me the arrangements had been reconsidered, like I was a vendor whose contract had expired. You were protecting yourself." She stood up from the chair. Her voice was louder than she intended. She did not lower it. "You were not protecting me. I did not ask to be protected. I asked to cut your hair, and you turned it into something else, and then you took it away, and you did not have the courage to do it yourself. You sent Garrett." "I sent Garrett because if I came myself, I would not have been able to..." "To what? To look at me? To tell me to my face that the woman whose hands your wolf reaches for is too dangerous to keep? Say it. Say it out loud. Tell me I'm Eamon Tull. Tell me I'm the Blade." "You are not!" Barrett stepped into the room, his voice breaking the managed register for a tone she'd never heard before. Not the half-octave drop into real, but upward, cracking, the voice of a man who was losing control of something he had been controlling for 15 years. "You are not the Blade. That is the point. You are not the Blade, and I am still afraid. Sefton did not make me afraid. I was already afraid. I have been afraid since the first appointment. I have been afraid every Thursday for 4 months, and you made me forget I was afraid. And then Sefton reminded me, and I could not. I could not sit in that chair and let you hold the razor and also be in love with you. I could not do both. The room went very quiet. Barrett's breathing was ragged. His hands were shaking. Not the tremor, something else, something rawer. He had said the word love, and it had come out like something torn loose, not planned, not managed, not the careful public version of anything. Tess was breathing hard too. Her hands were not steady. For the first time in 6 years, her hands were not steady. You could have told me that, she said, quieter now. Not calm, but the fury was changing shape, becoming something closer to grief. You could have told me you were afraid, and in love, and didn't know how to hold both. I would have understood. I hold contradictions every day. I hold a blade, and I hold gentleness, and they are not opposites. They are the same act. You could have said it to my face instead of sending Garrett with a cancellation. I know. I dropped the scissors twice because you wore a blue shirt, she said. I sharpened the razor 3 times in one morning because I was thinking about your jaw. I shifted on the 9th night because my human body couldn't contain the missing you. I have not been steady for weeks. My hands shake now. They shake when I think about your hands on the armrests and the way you learned to let go of them. You are the first person in my life who ever made my hands unsteady, and you canceled me like I was a service. Barrett's gaze dropped to her hands. They were shaking. And Brack, for the first time in 4 months, looked past the hands. He had been watching the hands since week 1, the safe hands. He had been so focused on them that he had never once looked at what was behind them. The wolf behind the hands was shaking too. Pip was there. Pip had been there the entire time, quiet, holding Tess's composure from the inside the way Brack held Barrett's. And now Pip was shaking, because Tess was shaking, and the wolf behind those hands was coming apart. Oh, Brack said, very quietly. He had not noticed her. 15 years of patience, and he had missed the most obvious thing in the room. The other wolf who had been waiting just as quietly, just behind the hands he loved. Oh, there you are. Sit down, Brack said, and it was the loudest Barrett had ever heard him. Not tender, not patient, furious. And underneath the fury, something new. Something that was not about Tess's hands at all. Sit down and tell her. Her wolf is shaking. We did this. Fix it. Tess, Barrett said. His voice was wrecked. I can't say it. I can't do the chair and the razor and also I can't hold both. I couldn't sit there and let you hold the blade and also be in love with you. I tried. For weeks. I sat there and every Thursday I was managing 2 things at once and I couldn't. So you dropped me instead of the management. Yes, I dropped you instead of. Yes, that is what I did. And it was cowardly. Yes, his voice broke. Just stopped. The way a sentence stops when it runs into the wall of what a person can say. I know, Tess said. I know what happened the last time you trusted someone that close. I don't know how to do this. I know armrests. I know locked mirrors. I know cutting my own hair with shaking hands. I don't know how to need someone and not be. I don't know how to need you and not be terrified that the needing is the thing that. Barrett, stop. He stopped. I am standing here with shaking hands, she said. Her voice was rough now, too, not composed, not the barber's voice, just hers. My hands shake. They haven't been steady in weeks. I am in love with you, and my grandmother's razor has never drawn blood, and it is not going to start with you. That's all I've got. I don't have a speech. I have shaking hands, and I'm here. Barrett sat down. Not in the barber's chair. Tess was standing in front of it. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, his knees drawn up. He looked up at her from below. The alpha king of 9 territories, on the floor, looking up at a village barber whose hands were still shaking. "I don't want the arrangements canceled," he said. His voice was wrecked. "Then don't cancel them." "I want you. I am afraid and I want you, and I am sorry I sent Gerrit instead of saying this myself. I was a coward about it. I am not a coward about most things, but I was a coward about you." That, Pip said quietly, is the most honest thing he has ever said. The comb was romantic. This is true. Tess sat down next to him, on the floor, her back against the wall, their shoulders touching. 2 people on the floor of a small room, both shaking, neither steady. "Your sideburns are a catastrophe," she said. He laughed, not the ghost smile, not the implication of a laugh, an actual laugh, rough and broken and surprised out of him, the sound of machinery that had seized for 15 years finally, painfully, starting to turn. "I know," he said. "I did them myself." It was criminal. It was very bad. They sat on the floor for a long time, shoulders touching. She reached for him, his fingers laced through hers and held. His grip was warm and large and no longer shaking. She turned to him. She put her hand on his jaw, not as a barber, not as a diagnostic, just her hand on his jaw, her thumb against his cheek, and he leaned into it, and this time the lean was not the wolf and not the man. It was everything, all of it, the whole creature leaning. She kissed him. It was not slow. It was the kind of kiss that comes after a fight, urgent and raw and honest in the way that only post-anger honesty is. The way you can only touch someone after you've shouted at them and they've shouted back and you're both still there. His hands came up, one in her hair, pulling the braid loose, and one at her waist, drawing her closer with a gravitational certainty that had nothing managed about it. They stayed in the kiss for a long time. Long enough that the light in the room shifted, the afternoon sun moving across the mirror. His forehead pressed to hers when they pulled apart. His breathing was ragged. His eyes were amber. Full amber, no gray-green left. His wolf looking out at her with the expression of a wolf that had never been wrong about this. "I missed you," he said, simply, without performance. The most unmanaged sentence he had ever produced. "I missed you too," she said. "I missed you so much I shifted and ran a ridge in the dark, and my wolf doesn't even like running." "I liked it fine," Pip said. "I liked it because we were running toward something. We just didn't know it yet." "Her hands," Brack said, quietly. Not for the last time, he would say it again, whenever she touched Barrett's hair, whenever she held the razor, whenever her fingers found his jaw. But this time it meant something different. Her hands, they're shaking, and she's here anyway. Chapter 5. Steady. The first Thursday after the reconciliation, Tess brought the razor. She climbed the stairs, she walked the corridor, she entered the small room. Barrett was already in the chair. His fingers rested in his lap. His hair needed work, 2 weeks of self-inflicted damage, and his jaw was rough with stubble. He looked at her. He looked at the bag. He looked at the shape of the razor case inside it. "You brought it," he said. "I bring it everywhere. Today I'm using it." She set up the way she always set up, tools on the linen cloth, drape across his shoulders, the ironwood comb first to assess the damage. She worked in silence for a few minutes, combing through the uneven patches, mapping what needed to be fixed. "Barrett." "Yes?" "You cut the left side a full inch shorter than the right." "I was working in the mirror. It's disorienting." "You have been watching me cut your hair in a mirror for 4 months. You learned nothing." "I learned that I should not cut my own hair." "He's being funny," Pip said. "He's being funny and he doesn't know he's being funny. This is the best kind." Tess fixed his hair. She did it properly. Not the slow, narrated 11 cuts in 2 hours protocol of the first appointment. A professional haircut, 40 minutes. The scissors moved with confidence. She did not announce each cut. She did not check in after every stroke. She cut his hair the way she cut everyone's hair, the way she would have cut it from the beginning if he had been anyone else. But he was not anyone else, and at certain moments, when her fingers ran through the hair at his temple near the scar, or when she adjusted the angle of his head with a palm against his jaw, he leaned. Openly, without pretending. The lean of a wolf who has been given permission to be exactly where he belongs. She lathered his jaw. She opened the razor. She shaved him. He was still. Not the rigid stillness of the early appointments, the settled stillness. The stillness of a man who had chosen 14 days ago to stop fighting the safest thing in his life. When she finished, she wiped the blade and folded it closed. She removed the drape. She stepped back. "Thursday," she said. "Thursday," he agreed. She paused at the door. "Barrett." "Yes." "Your cook's porridge suggestion was not unreasonable. I'll let her know. She'll be devastated to learn she had an ally this entire time." She marked him on a Thursday, the 5th Thursday after the reconciliation. Late afternoon light through the window, the small room, the one chair, the one mirror, the one window. She had finished his haircut. She had put down the scissors. She had folded the razor closed and set it on the linen cloth beside the ironwood comb. She had removed the drape from his shoulders, and then she had not stepped back. She stood behind the chair with her palms on his shoulders. He looked at her in the mirror. His eyes were shifting, the gray-green warming, the amber starting at the edges. She could feel his shoulders under her palms, the heat of him, the barely contained stillness. "Tess," he said, low. The register that meant the managed version had left the room. "I want to mark you," she said. "Here, in this room, where you learned to be still." He held her gaze in the mirror. Then he tilted his head, the same gesture she had taught him, the slow, deliberate tilt. Throat exposed, the most vulnerable position a wolf can take, the position that had cost him everything to allow the first time, and now cost him nothing, because the person he was offering it to had spent 4 months proving that trust could be gentle. She leaned down. She pressed her mouth to the curve where his neck met his shoulder. She felt his pulse under her lips, steady, 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 and she bit. He was still, not rigid, settled. The settled stillness of a wolf who was exactly where he chose to be. The bond arrived like a held breath releasing. Not a crash, not a wave, not a magical surge. A settling. The specific feeling of a thing that has been waiting for its correct shape and has found it. She could feel him, not his thoughts, not his words, but the weight of him, the warmth, the deep, quiet certainty of a wolf who had decided. "Home," Brack said. One word, the quietest he had ever been. Home. And then, through the bond, for the first time, Brack felt Pip. Not the hands, not the steadiness, not the professional calm that he had been watching for 4 months. The wolf, the actual wolf, quiet, warm, patient in a way he recognized because it was the same patience he carried. She had been waiting too. She had been watching him through the appointments, through the scent, through the quality of his attention, and she had not said anything, and she had not pushed, and she had waited the way he had waited, steadily, without performance, without asking to be noticed. "There you are," Brack said again. But it was different this time. In the doorway of the fight scene it had been surprise, the shock of noticing what he'd missed. Now, through the bond, it was recognition. The wolf behind the hands, finally seen, finally known. "Here I am," Pip said, through the bond, through Tess, the first time she had spoken directly to him. "I've been here the whole time. You were looking at the wrong thing." "I was looking at the hands. I know, the hands are very good. But they're mine. I'm the one holding them steady. I know that now." "Took you long enough," Pip said. And there was something in her wolf voice that was warm and exasperated, and entirely, specifically hers. Not Tess's voice, not Tess's humor, but the wolf's own quality. The quiet creature who had been holding them true all along, who had matched Brack's patience with her own 6-year version, and had not once complained about the weight. Barrett's hand came up to the back of her neck. He held her there, his thumb against the pulse point at her throat, the same hold she used when she positioned a customer's head for a cut. She had taught him that without meaning to. He had learned it without being told. "Your turn," she said. He stood. He turned. He put his hand on her jaw, the barber's hold returned, and he tilted her head with the careful precision of a man who understood what it meant to expose your throat to someone. She let him. She offered the tilt the way she had taught him to receive it, slowly, deliberately, without fear. He marked her. It hurt in the way real things hurt, the sharp, clean hurt of something that means what it is. She did not flinch. Pip was quiet inside her, calmer than Tess had ever felt her, not speaking, just present, just warm, just certain. The bond deepened. She could feel him more clearly now, both directions, the warmth and the weight, the warm pulse of a connection built from 16 weeks of 40-minute appointments and one chair and one mirror and one window. Barrett pressed his forehead to hers. His eyes were full amber. His breathing was uneven. He said nothing. He did not need to say anything. The lean said it. The lean had always said it. Sefton came to see her the next morning. He stood in the doorway of her shop. He looked at the mark on her neck, visible above her collar, deliberate, not hidden. He looked at her face. "I was wrong," he said. "You were not wrong," Tess said. "You were 3 steps too slow on the worst day of your life. And you have been trying to make up those 3 steps for 15 years. You were wrong about me. You were not wrong to be afraid." Sefton did not move. He was, she realized, a man who had never been told that his fear was reasonable, only that it was inconvenient. "He sleeps through the night now," Sefton said. "I know." "You did that." "He did that," Tess said. "I held the blade. He chose to be still. That was always his, not mine." Sefton nodded once. He left. Garrett appeared 10 minutes later, because Garrett always appeared when something had happened that required logistical processing. "You've bonded with the king," Garrett said. "Yes. This will require significant schedule adjustments." "Garrett, your Thursday appointments will need to be formally reclassified." "Garrett, I am happy for you," Garrett said, in the tone of a man who was happy, in the way that accountants are happy, with satisfaction that the numbers had resolved to the correct total. "I am also going to need you to fill out a residency form." "I love Garrett," Pip said. "He's terrible, and I love him." They have been bonded for 1 year. Tess still cuts his hair weekly. The appointments are still on Thursdays, still in the small room, still 40 minutes. The room still has 1 chair, 1 mirror, 1 window. Barrett still leans into her hands. He no longer pretends not to notice. His wolf leans openly, pressing his head into her palm whenever she touches his hair, the full weight of a creature that has never once doubted where it belongs. His tremor has improved. The healers say the regular appointments, the years of them, the steadiness of them, the fact that every Thursday for a year a blade has been held near his throat, and every Thursday the blade has been gentle, have reduced his baseline anxiety enough that the nerve damage has partially healed. The tremor is nearly gone. He chooses not to. he chooses her. Sefton stands outside the door on Thursdays. He no longer stands there to listen for the sound of something going wrong. He stands there because it is the 1 hour each week when he knows, with complete certainty, that the king is safe. And that certainty is something he has not had since the old king died. And he is not willing to give it up. She uses her grandmother's razor every week. She has still nicked 0 customers. The razor is still sharp. Nan Birch would have understood everything. The king, the wolf, the leaning, the small room, the faith. A barber does not just cut hair. A barber holds a blade near someone who has chosen to be still. That is not grooming. That is faith. Steady, Pip says, every Thursday when they walk up the hill. The same word she has said since the beginning. The same word, but it means something different now. Not an instruction, not a reassurance. A name for what they are. Steady.